All right, so we're going to take a look at trinomials that have a higher degree. Now the directions say factor completely. And so what we want to do when it says factor completely is we go through a list of steps where the first list would be to always find and look for any greatest common factors. And then step 2 and step 3, we're not going to do in this step 2 we're not going to do in this video. Step 4 we're not going to do in this video. These would be perfect square trinomial, difference of squares. Step 4 would be grouping. We're going to focus here on step 3 would be my X group method, grouping. And so here what we're going to find is that these trinomials have a GCF that will reduce the power, the degree, and then we can factor using our X grouping method. So first thing you want to recognize is that this is in descending order, standard form, because we do want to be in standard form. And they all have a 3 and an x in common. So I'm going to write it up top, 3x in common, and left over, if I divide this by 3 and x, I'll be left with an x squared. Divide this by a 3 and an x, I'll get a negative 7x result. And divide the 18 by 3x, I'm going to get a positive 6 result. And then we want to do more factoring. That was the first step. That was just my GCF. And now I notice that there is a trinomial left. And so I'm going to use my x, my magic x, with grouping if necessary. Now, because there's a 1 here, I won't have to do grouping. I just get to use my magic, which means the numbers on the side are going to be my factors. So the 6 and the 1 multiply to be 6 on top. And the negative 7, the b value goes on the bottom. Well, the only way to get a number bigger on the bottom is to use the 6 and its 1 that will add to be 7. Both of those need to be negative to make a negative 7. Now, this is the situation where my 1 is the a value, so I can actually rewrite this trinomial to be x minus 6 and x minus 1. The numbers on the side of the magic x are only that magical to get directly to the factors if the a value is 1. Now the 3x that was hanging out in front needs to come right down below. And this is a fully factored polynomial. Was a cubic trinomial. Now it has a GCF out in front and then a pair of binomial products. Now in this second scenario, first thing I want us to recognize is we are not in standard form. We want to be in descending order of powers. And so first thing I'm going to do is rewrite it. Negative x to the third plus 11x squared minus 24x. Not sure why the squared disappeared there. Now, because there is a negative leading coefficient, this is the scenario where I want to go ahead and call my GCF that negative. So I'm going to factor out a negative here. So I'm going to make this a negative, and they all have x. So I'm making a negative x. So that's my GCF. If I divide each by a negative x, I'm going to get a trinomial left, negative x here. This will reduce to be positive x squared. So my sign should change. Divide this by a negative x, my sign should change to be a negative 11x. And divide this negative 24 by a negative x, the sign should change to be a positive 24. All my variables have reduced one power. And now I get a magic x scenario where the leading coefficient is 1. So whatever comes out of my magic x is the simplest form that this is going to factor to be. So 24 times 1 is going to be 24 on top. And then negative 11 on the bottom. So again, this is a times c. It just happens to be 24 because it's times 1. And the b value on the bottom. And then we have to figure out what multiplies to be 24 that adds to be 11. And so we get 8 and 3. Both of those have to be negative to make negative 11. So negative, negative. And again, because this is a 1, I can use the shortcut, which is this will be x minus 8, x minus 3. The negative x just needs to remain in front. And now this is a fully factored, factor completely for the cubic trinomial I started with. All right, so in this example, we have a negative and a value that's not 1, to factor out. So negative 2x to the third plus 12x squared, and then plus 54x. So when I identify in standard form that I have a negative a value with the 2 that's in common, I'm going to factor that out with the x. So these all reduce and divide by negative 2x. So this will be divided by negative 2x, and that gives me positive x to the second. Divide this by negative 2x. That'll get me negative 6x. Divide this by negative 2x. And that'll get me negative 27. And now I do my magic x with the full magic because the a value is 1. Negative 27 will be on top. Negative 6 on the bottom. You got to figure out what multiplies to be 27 adds to be 6. And I should get 9 and 3 with a difference of 6. I just need to make the 9 negative. So this will be x minus 9, x plus 3 with a negative 2x coming down out in front.